You know, we can learn something from the Trump v. Thompson case, right? Because that's one, again, where executive privilege to, you know,
tell people what that is real quick.
Executive privilege is really a communications privilege to protect the free flow of communications within the White House by the president and those of his closest aides, right? And so that means that they can be privileged against having to testify about what they talked about or turn over documents about what they talked about in some cases, if they fall within that privilege. That privilege is not absolute, even though the president, many presidents of both parties want to say it's absolute. It actually is not absolute, and it can yield to an overwhelming and compelling government interest. And what was interesting about the House Select Committee's request for documents, presidential records, as part of his investigation is Donald Trump was no longer the sitting president, yet he invoked executive privilege. President Biden, who was the president, said, I'm not invoking executive privilege. So you had this clash of a current president and a former president. So the first issue was, can Trump even claim executive privilege? There's some precedent for former presidents being able to claim it, so that went forward. And then it was rejected because what the House Select Committee had asked for was clearly within their constitutional authority to gather information for purposes of potential legislation. And so under a variety of different tests that could possibly be applicable, the court said, you don't have executive privilege here. That decision was stayed. That was a decision of Judge Chutkan, went to the DC Circuit. They ruled the same way. That was stayed while this went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court then, they asked the Supreme Court to stay, in other words, stay the order for the documents to be sent to the House Select Committee. The Supreme Court denied the stay and denied cert. And that
And the two dissents are the two you're talking about.
Well, there was only one vote
one.
not
Right.
to stay it, and I think we all know who that is. And so that's a different situation than whether he's got immunity from criminal culpability. It totally is, but I think it does show that this court does care, despite all the other gripes that many of us have with this court. At least some of them do care about the institution. I think that they find January 6th and what happened there. I mean, the Supreme Court was right in the middle of, it's right across the street from the Capitol. The mob was, coming onto their grounds too. The fences went up around the Supreme Court just like they did around the Capitol, right? They lived in that environment based on this violence, and I think they're appalled by it, at least most of them. So I feel like justices, including Trump appointees, Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh, I think, they care about the preservation of democracy. And so that's my optimism, and I'm not always optimistic.
No, I'll take it.